Hello and welcome back for episode 3 of Meandering with Nia. Let's meander. Y'all, I'm having too much fun with this. Can I tell you that when I filmed the episode yesterday, I'm pretty sure the what I put up yesterday has one view. And you know who that one view is? This kid. I literally put the video up and then just had my little coffee, had my little lunch, and I just watched it through. Also shout out for me getting almost under 10 minutes, under 11 minutes. And I was like, I'm so proud of you, Nia. Like, you're just shining. You're saying amazing things. And Nia, you're amazing. And I think you found your thing, you know? And so I realized whether for the rest of my life, there's just like one person watching it and that one person is me. That's all that matters, okay? That's all that matters. So all of this to say, we made it to day 3. I'm really excited, and yeah, let's get into it. I'm so happy. Okay, so we are on day 3 of Meditations for Mortals, and I'm not gonna lie, this might be a little longer of an episode because it brought up a lot for me. Day 3 is all about on paying the price, is what the chapter is called. And one of the first quotes right off the bat was, quote, "Consequences aren't optional. It's in the nature of being finite that every choice comes with some sort of consequences." And then I wrote, "Being human is simply a series of decisions, and each decision we make comes with consequences. We can't escape the inherent, inevitable reality that every action has a reaction." And then I went on a little sidetrack, which is very much related. And I was like, wait, it's giving Newton's laws of motion. So I did a little research and pulled up the 3 laws of Newton in motion. And so those 3 laws are, for anybody trying to get back to physics 101, so Newton's 3 laws of motion. 1, an object at rest stays at rest. 2, an object in motion stays in motion, this part is important, with the same speed and force unless acted on by an unbalanced force. We'll get back to that. And then 3, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And I was just like, Newton was on it. Like, Newton was Newtoning, you know what I'm saying? And so I just feel like these 3 laws of motion are just so helpful to understand how to be a human and understand the nature of our finitude. And I'm gonna talk about it. Okay, so what I wrote in my journal about these 3 laws of motion were, we can't avoid the reactions of life. If we take action and make decisions, and even a lack of action or not making a decision is an action, because inaction is still a form of action, you know? And that's what I thought was really interesting, okay? When we think about the first law of an object at rest stays at rest, to me that could be kind of an example of inaction. If I'm like, yo, I am super nervous, or I don't know, or I just don't want to make a decision, then you're gonna stay in that same vibe. You know what I'm saying? Of the suffering of oh, do I choose to do this or do I choose to do this? I'm not gonna make a decision. Well, you've already made a decision, because if the decision is am I going to quit my job or not? I'm not gonna make a decision. That probably means you're staying in your job because you're not making a decision, but you've made a decision to stay in your job. You know what I mean? I guess the inaction could be I'm just gonna stay in my bed and not do anything. However, that's a decision too. You know what I mean? Choosing to stay in your bed and choosing not to do anything, not to do anything is doing something, because what you're doing is nothing. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, there's that. And then the second one, right? An object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and force unless acted on by an unbalanced force. And this is what got me, that unbalanced force, because when we are just living our lives in a certain way, we're going to keep going in that direction unless we make a decision that will have the impact and effect and consequences to shift that. Because sometimes you're going on a little motion, right? And then you're like, oh, but maybe I'll make like a different choice. But if it's not unbalanced, if it's not big enough to change, it's just going to be like, boop, you know, and keep going. And so there's just so much in this, and I'm just like realizing like I'm in my head so much because I just have so much I want to say. So let me just like get back to the I think it might be helpful if I like read a little bit. Okay, so what I wrote was, y'all, it's foolish to think that we can avoid physics. And that's exactly what actually happened to me when I was living in Cachoeira, in the state of Bahia, in Brazil. And what was happening was I didn't want change. I had so much come to love my community. Like, oof, when I tell you I loved, just a moment, for my neighbors, like playing soccer with them, dancing with them, my little neighbors ranging from like 5 years old to 12 years old. I love them, and I will always love them. My house that I was living in, chef's kiss. Oh, if I showed you the photos, it was giving veranda. I bought a hammock. I would just go up there. I was doing my little yoga. The kitchen was beautiful. The sunlight was sunning. Whew, it's clearly like, I mean, I'm only on day 16 back in the United States, so it's very fresh in my heart and my mind. And so all of that stuff was like the consequences of me saying yes to living in Cachoeira were amazing, right? Like all of those things were the positive consequences. However, over time, I was starting to notice that the dynamic, so I was sharing the house with another human being. And like little by little, you know, we're all humans, you know? And so sometimes you mesh with a person, sometimes you don't. And I think what's hard is when like sometimes you do mesh with that person and then other times you don't mesh with that person because of a multitude of reasons. And so I started weighing the consequences, right? Of like, I don't know, like sometimes like the vibe in the house is like not that great, but I really don't want to move because the consequences of me moving would be like losing proximity to all of my beautiful neighbors. Also, this house is so beautiful, and I counted the cost and I was like, I will choose to live in this situation, understanding it's not perfect, because guess what? Nothing is perfect. And so that's what I'm just like, life is a series of consequences. And so what I kept writing in my journal today as I was reading through this chapter was, I didn't want change. I didn't want to deal with the consequences of having to leave. So I let my house dynamic keep unfolding. And this is where we get back to Newton's second law of an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and force unless acted on by an unbalanced force. And I was not willing to like act on this situation with an unbalanced force, which would have been like leaving or having like a very stern conversation with my housemate. And so what happened? The motion that it was going in, it kept going in that motion at that same speed in that same direction. And guess what? Like I already had identified that the direction and the speed and the motion we were going in was not great and was not healthy. But I didn't want to act on it with an unbalanced force, because if I act on it with an unbalanced force, that would have consequences, and I wasn't willing to pay those consequences. And so what happened? The house dynamic kept unfolding in the same direction at the same speed, which was headed for an inevitable collision. And it did on June 17th. And that led me to having to make the very decision that I was doing everything I could to avoid, which was leave my home. I am trying to remember that like it's not a failure, it's not a mistake to have to be constantly making decisions. because I think the false reality that I want to live in is like, oh, I can finally make one decision and then I'll never have to make a decision again. And I think that's what happened in Cachoeira. I was like, okay, it took me so long to get here. It took me like 3 years of meandering among like 4 or 5 different countries to finally find a country that feels like home, that feels like I can start a community, to find this city in specific that feels like there's so much possibility here. So I'm making like the last decision that I'll ever have to make in my life, and I am choosing to root down in Cachoeira, and I'm never making another decision again. And that was me not even understanding that, like, every day that I chose to be in Cachoeira was still a decision. And so I'm realizing that we can't avoid making decisions, and also we can't avoid that each decision we make has consequences, which is what this whole chapter and reflection was about. And so where I'm at now in my life is having to make the decision of, do I try to build a life in the United States, or do I try to return to South America and some of the countries that I do have like connection and community with? And I'm trying to figure it out. And that's what this series is about. And I think what I might actually do is make a second episode, like a part 2 of episode 3. Because I think this will just be like really helpful to have for me as a reminder and a like, what do you call it? Just like a thing to return back to, of like, what are the things I'm weighing right now? What are the costs I'm weighing right now of like staying in the United States or trying to go back to, I almost said my homeland, like the land that I love in South America, la tierra, la teja. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop here for today. Oh, but I will end with a quote that I really loved that was in the book, but it's by a person named Sheldon Kopp, which says, "You are free to do whatever you like. You need only face the consequences." So that is the challenge today for y'all, challenge by choice. But what decisions are in your life right now, and are you willing to do the work of recognizing that there will always be consequences, and what consequences are you willing to accept and live into, and which ones are you like, no, that's not for me? So I'm excited. Feel free to write in the comments what you're thinking through these days, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. But hold on for part 2, where I'll tell you what I'm thinking about with my decisions these days. So all right, love y'all. Thanks for meandering.